Well, good morning, everybody. This is the news that we are waking up to for Monday, March 24th, 2025, day 1125 of Vladimir Putin's war of choice against the people of Ukraine. And I really want to stress that today because that's what this is. It's Vladimir Putin's war of choice. It's an imperial attempt to expand the Russian Empire at the cost of Ukrainian sovereignty, lives, culture, language. It's genocide. That's what's going on here. And from that frame of reference, let's take a look at the last 72 hours since we last spoke on Friday. Now, over the weekend, some of you may have seen the videos from Saturday night when the big drone attack came in. There is supposed to be this ceasefire on energy infrastructure. It is nonsense of the first sort. There is no ceasefire. There is no ceasefire even on energy infrastructure, as we saw energy infrastructure in Ukraine struck over the weekend. However, there was a change in the attitude, if you will, because we saw increasingly civilians targeted. Civilian apartment blocks all over Kyiv were hit. We lost 5 people over the weekend, one of them a 5-year-old girl and her father. The video of him screaming as he burned to death is not something I would play here for you. It was awful, beyond words. Now, last night, though, we did see something unusual because normally the Russians really pound Ukraine on Sunday nights so that we're all exhausted for Monday morning and for the rest of the week, right? And yet last night we saw only about half as many drones come in as normally do. Certainly about 2/3 of what came in on Saturday night. Only 99 drones last night. And I don't have an explanation for that. I don't know why. Of those 99, 93 were either shot down or intercepted with electronic warfare or other countermeasures. So a 94% interception rate last night by the Ukrainian armed forces and mobile defense units. For today, we're going to focus on this guy. This is Steve Witkoff. He's Trump's special envoy to Russia for the peace negotiations. Now, hang on a second. General Keith Kellogg is supposed to be the special envoy for peace negotiations, right? The Russians wouldn't have him because he knows what's going on over here. They wanted a naive billionaire, one of Trump's friends, with no real political background at all, so that they could twist him any way they wanted, and boy, were they successful. Among his comments coming out of the meeting were, Putin's a good guy, which reminds me of the naivety of George Bush Jr. when he met Putin back in, I want to say 2000, 2001, around that time. Putin was wearing what he claimed was his grandmother's crucifix. And Bush said he looked into his eyes and he saw the soul of a Christian, a good person. I would love to know if Putin ever wore that crucifix again, or was ever known to have worn it before, or if he knew that the naivety of the American right is such that he could put a crucifix on and convince the President of the United States that they were in it together, because that is just exactly what happened. And that deep naivete of the Russians is on full, regarding the Russians and their attitudes toward us, is on full display with this jackass. So the very first thing he says is that Putin's got a huge... I'm sorry. Let me try again. Putin's got a huge respect for the president, meaning Donald Trump. the very same person that Putin told an audience on Friday, while he made Trump wait an hour for the call, that it was Trump's job to wait on him. And the audience laughed and cheered and popped champagne corks in jubilation. This deep level of naivete around who our enemies are is what's going to get us all killed. It's just that simple. It's just that simple. But they believe it. Now, that was not enough to extol the virtues. Oh, and by the way, this is Witkoff in conversation with Tucker Carlson. And I will not repeat any of Tucker's comments. We're just going to focus on Witkoff's. This was followed up by insulting Zelensky again. You saw what happened in the Oval Office with Zelensky and the president, right? I mean, disrespecting the president is not the way to have a relationship with him, he went on to say. Those of us who watched that meeting know what that meeting was. It was an ambush. It was a setup by the President of the United States, the most powerful person on earth, or at least he was, of a wartime president who we have treaty obligations to support. And this guy wants to play that tune that he is disrespectful to the president. Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister, acknowledged that in his meeting with Trump, Trump asked him to vilify Zelensky, tear him down, clearly on the orders of his Russian handlers. Further toxicity from Mr. Witkoff came in the form of, and oh, we have been so good to them. This is the kind of talk that you get from an abusive spouse whose wife has finally left him, talking about how good he was to her, all the while trying to extort every last penny he can from her inheritance. That's the Trump administration. This is the embracing of our enemy's narrative of lies. This guy doesn't have any facts straight at all. He talked about the history of Ukraine, which I will not bore you with. And he gets it all. I mean, it's just factually wrong. And for some of us, facts still matter. Not for these fuckers. Not for them at all. Again, facts do not matter to these people. He said in the interview, I think we have moved Russia in ways that no one thought was possible. How have we moved Russia? How has this administration moved Russia from its maximalist goals, which they are still insisting on? This is such self-congratulatory, self-deluded nonsense that one does not know where to begin. These guys have bought into the Russian myth that Ukraine isn't really a country, that it doesn't have its own people, culture, and language. Not really. It's like a red-headed stepchild of the Russian Empire, and it belongs to them. And Witkoff went on to say something very disturbing. Or rather, I apologize, not in this interview, in a separate interview. He said essentially that the Russian territory that they have taken from Ukraine is Russian. For us to be going into peace negotiations, having ceded 20% of Ukraine, well, 18.61% of Ukraine, to the Russians is obscene. And it is certainly not anything that Putin respects. Putin only respects strength. He does not respect anybody who bends over for him. He went on to say, quite ignorantly, that Ukraine and Russia are engaged in 40, 50, 60, 70, or 80, I don't know, that's a direct quote, conflict points along the front line. And when Putin, and he claims that Putin asked him about one specific conflict zone, Kursk, to which Putin asked, how do I get them to give up? I'm happy not to kill everybody. I'm happy to get people to wave the white flag if I can get them to wave the white flag. Now, first of all, the troops in Kursk are not surrounded. It is not a choice that Putin even has to kill them, right? They are fighting. There are pitched battles going on in heavily defended and fortified locations inside Kursk, even at this moment. So this giving into Putin's delusion that everyone there is simply still alive because of his good graces is nonsense of the first order. And of course he wants them to surrender because he then summarily executes them. And so if they surrender, he doesn't risk any more men and machines of his own. To believe that this makes him a good guy is a tragic failure to understand the reality of the situation that you are living in and the depths of depravity of the person you are dealing with. He is not a good guy. While the White House embraces these Russian narratives and spews them using the X platform to spew them onto millions of Americans who unfortunately believe them, the Russians unalived 10 people, 10 civilians over the weekend here in Ukraine. Among them, this 5-year-old girl and her father. And again, I mentioned the video of his death. It is horrific, simply beyond imagining. And so while Putin targets civilians indiscriminately, and here's some more evidence of that, this is Kherson. This is video from a Russian spotter drone, which the Russians published on Telegram. Okay, that's why we have this video. But the human safari in Kherson continues. A bunch of guys working on a roof targeted by a Russian drone. Civilians, clearly. As many of you who follow this channel are aware, the Russians have been using Kherson as a training ground where new drone operators are trained to use drones by hunting the 50,000 people in Kherson trying to live their lives. We have seen bus stops hit, buses hit, dozens of people killed in just the last few months from these training exercises, these live fire training exercises against civilians, all of which are war crimes, and which the Russians continue to promulgate by publishing the video on Telegram and other channels. This is where we are at. This is where we are at. We have an administration that is in no way up to the task of handling this situation and displays their ignorance and naivete at every turn, constantly giving in to the Russians. While Trump lies about it. You may have seen that interview where he said that he and Putin didn't discuss cutting off aid to Ukraine. This is nonsense. That's a top-line agenda item for Putin. And it happened immediately after the call. So please, don't look in the camera and lie to the American people the way that you do, the way we know you do. It's obscene. Okay, that's it for me. Things are tough. There's no doubt about it. We are at the most dangerous point in this thing. The U.S. federal system of government has been subverted by the Russians in the re-election of Donald Trump. And he is wholesale taking a chainsaw to our way of life and our federal system that has been the basis of our post-World War II prosperity. There, in the words of General Ben Hodges, there is nothing good that can come out of any of this. Thanks, everybody. I'll see you in the live tonight. Oh, special, it looks like, with a little bit of luck, Dr. K, who many of you may know from her political analysis, will be our special guest on Wednesday on the live. And we'll be talking about the world from her perspective. And I really look forward to that conversation, and I do hope you will join me. That's this Wednesday at 5 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time on the TikTok channel. Thank you, guys.